Hello, Georgetown. I'm Beverly Enos, and you're watching Spotlight Georgetown. You can find us Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. on your local cable station. If you would like to become part of the process, this is your cable station. You pay for it, gets paid for out of your cable bills. So if you want to become part of it, come on down, let me know, and we'll teach you how to use the cameras or how to do editing or train you as to use the equipment so that you can do some work with your nonprofits. And they've got the best toys here. They've got just absolutely the best toys. Now today we're going to be talking to David Weaver, and you're actually retired.
I am.
He's a retired wildlife biologist volunteering at the Mass Audubon's JoppaFlats in Newburyport, it's Newburyport, but it's actually on Plum Island. So, welcome.
Thank you.
Good to have you here.
Good
Now,
to be
where
here.
are you actually from?
I'm actually from Manchester, Massachusetts. Manchester by the sea. Massachusetts, yeah.
And you have family there?
I do, my wife. It's her ancestral home. She said she planned to move there. I could join her if I like. So we got the
Well, that's a good way to do it.
discretion being the better part of stupidity.
Yeah. Now, how did you get involved in wildlife biology?
Oh, it's been an interest most of my life. I first became interested in birds in the 4th grade with the singing of a wood thrush on my walking to school, and it's kind of grown from there. I majored in biology in college and then in wildlife in grad school, and it's just kind of been a natural thing to come by.
I didn't realize you could major in wildlife.
Mm-hmm.
I know the biology major is very common in college. Now, where did you go to school?
Well, I went to, as an undergraduate, I was at Washington and Lee University in Lexington, Virginia, and then
Pretty part of the country.
yes, Shenandoah Valley. Graduate school, my master's and PhD at the University of Michigan
Okay.
in Ann Arbor. Yeah.
Is that where you're from originally? Or?
Originally from about 20 miles from Times Square in
Oh, really?
New York. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Pelham, New York.
So you've gone from being a city kid to being a country kid.
Yeah, you could say that, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Massachusetts has 54 wildlife sanctuaries, which I was surprised because when I went online, I always go online to check out what we're doing. And I didn't realize how many we had. Now, not all of them are birds. Some of them are other critters, lots of other critters. But the one that's closest to us is JoppaFlats. And we hear that spoken about all the time. Exactly what and where are JoppaFlats?
Well, JoppaFlats themselves are actually mud flats toward the mouth of the Merrimack River, and visible at low tide as you drive along the Plum Island Turnpike toward Plum Island or up toward Newburyport. The education center itself is located on the flats or on the river, if you will.
Okay, now is that both sides of the bridge when you go over into Plum Island?
Well, I think predominantly the flats are considered on the would be the north side of the river or north side of the bridge.
The water side.
Yeah.
The water side more. As I was driving off Plum Island a couple of weeks ago, I noticed the education center I've known it was there. It's large. It's really massive.
Mm-hmm.
Without the leaves on the trees, you can really see it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how long has that been there?
It was opened in April of 2003, so
Okay.
it's been there not that long. That used to be the site of the Sportsman's Bar,
That's what was
and
there. Okay.
Mass Audubon was able to acquire that property and establish the JoppaFlats Education Center.
Now, how long have you been there?
I've been there about that long. I retired in January of 2002, and we moved up here to Manchester in June of 2002, and I started birding with Bill Getty at JoppaFlats. I guess it was early fall 2002.
Now, when you were working, did you work within the wildlife field?
Yes.
What were you doing then?
Well, 20 years, for 20 years I was the Natural Resources Manager for a special park district in the Minneapolis area. There was a park district that was natural resources based, and we had about 25,000 acres all within about half hour of downtown Minneapolis that were managed for the so-called 80-20 policy, where at least 80% had to be retained in as natural state as possible. 20 could be for intensive public use. And then the last 12 years of my career, I was a grants administrator for the North American Wetlands Conservation Fund with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and that was located in the D.C. area. Yeah.
So you've moved around.
A little bit.
Yeah. Now, so you live in Manchester by the Sea, and you work basically on Plum Island. I mean, even though it's Newburyport.
It's not on Plum Island per se. It's we have to go across the bridge to get onto Plum Island. So we're on the west side of the bridge, just after you take a right off of Rolfs Lane to go onto Plum Island Turnpike. Yeah.
All right. Now, we've had a lot of inquiries, and we're talking today mostly about hawks and some of the larger birds. We've had a lot of inquiries about more hawks than usual right now at this time of the year. We're talking in the fall in Massachusetts. I have them in my yard. In fact, I live across from what is the town gardens. So they have a lot of nesting areas over there. So I have them pretty much all year round. But there've really been a lot of them over the last couple of years. Is the population increasing or?
Well, there are certain populations that are doing fairly well. The birds that are doing particularly well are red-tailed hawks and the so-called accipiters, especially the Cooper's hawk. And Cooper's hawk and sharp-shinned hawks, they feed on birds, smaller birds, and so they are attracted to bird-feeding areas, people's homes. The Cooper's hawk especially its population is increasing quite noticeably. This year, we're dealing with what happened a year ago, which was a crash, if you will, of the acorn population, acorn crop, I should say, because there was very little in the way of fruit on the oak trees in 2011. And because of that, the rodent population has taken a dive, including squirrels. And when the rodent population goes down, then there are rodent-feeding hawks that also suffer a bit, including the red tails and other birds like barred owl and screech owl, things like that. So.
And is that partially due to the fact that we just didn't have a lot of snow, or we had a lot of rain?
It's hard to say. It could be a combination of many things. I know that many oak species are cyclical in their mast or acorn production. And it may be in just kind of the perfect storm when all these kinds of things came together, and there were very few acorns produced in 2011.
So without the acorns, they don't have the small critters, and without the small critters, they're hungry.
They're hungry, indeed.
Okay.
Yep.
I play golf at Far Corner, and we were going on one of the holes one day, and all of a sudden we heard this screeching noise, and this hawk came down, as close as you are, just came down right into the leaves that were all the leaves that had fallen off the trees, grabbed something, and went right back up again. Couldn't have been more than 5 seconds. And this bird came down, found a little critter, and took it back up to one of the boughs of the tree, and then had lunch.
This is how they make their living. You know?
They're fast.
Yes, they are.
They're just
Do you
so
know what
fast.
it was? Was it a red tail?
It was a red tail.
It was red?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was a red tail. You could see, because when they put their wings out, you can really see the red underneath part of the tail more than when the wings are closed
And that's of course the adult bird. The birds of the year or the younger birds do not have that red tail yet. So
it was pretty big.
Yeah.
So hawks, how big are hawks?
They vary in size from our small falcon called the American kestrel. They can't be more than 10, 12 inches up to a bald eagle, which can be, it's got a 6-foot wingspan. And,
oh, wow.
and can weigh 5-6 pounds. So it's fairly different, a great differential in size.
We're going to do a truth or a myth here. Is it true that birds generally have to eat their weight in food every day?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, because that's how I grew up, and I'm thinking, how can a bird eat that much food?
They're right.
In one day.
It depends on the species, I think, and that the old saying, eating like a bird, which is meant to mean you're not eating very much,
right.
is that's the myth.
Okay.
They really do eat quite a bit.
They eat a lot.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. And if people have bird feeders, they know that. There's always somebody at the bird feeder. If it's not squirrels.
Right.
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 Now, what other birds of prey or raptors are being seen at this time of the year?
Well, this is wintertime. We're getting on toward wintertime, and there are certain species that we do expect. We expect to see rough-legged hawks. which is another, it was a member of the same group of hawks that the red-tail is, the so-called buteos. We expect to see snowy owls
Really?
out on Plum Island. We expect to see barred owls. We expect to see screech owls. There are those species too that are here year-round, but these in particular are we expect to see in the wintertime. Now, whether we see them or not is dependent on what is happening up north, where they come from. They nest on the tundra in the Arctic, both rough-legged and the snowy
Really?
owl. And if they have adequate food resources there, in the way of voles and other rodents, then there's no reason for them to come south. Last winter was an actually amazing winter for seeing snowy owls across the entire United States northern tier. And that's primarily because of a crash of the feeding of, or I should say the food resources, like lemmings up on the tundra. And what happens with these birds, snowy owls, when they have adequate food, when they have a lot of food, they're going to respond by laying more eggs and raising more young. And then if the food source goes away and there's all these birds with nothing to feed on, then they're going to start moving south in search of food.
So we are the south for some of these birds.
Yes, we are. Yeah.
How far south do they go beyond us?
They're not going to go a great deal further. I mean, we do see these birds get down into perhaps northern Virginia every now and then, but they're predominantly
cold weather birds.
In this area. Yeah, they're cold weather birds. But having said that, they're going to go where the food is, and they may not go any further south than here, or they may have to go further even yet. And this time around, the food resources are pretty meager. And so the likes of barred owls, which a lot have been seen of, they are in trouble. I mean, they're quite underweight and maybe even emaciated. They having come from further north because maybe their food resources are not good up there, and then to get down here and find that there's not too much better, and they're going to be transit and continue on.
And they only eat critters. They don't eat nuts and
yes,
twigs.
These are all carnivores.
Okay.
Yep.
A friend of mine had owls, and they nested in her backyard, and they didn't seem to be afraid of the people at all. They just kind of.
Do we know what kind of owls they were?
I think they were snowy.
No, it couldn't have been snowy.
Okay.
Not nesting.
Which one was the big round faces?
Well, it would be barred owl, or it could have been great horned owls.
No, it wasn't great horned.
Yeah.
It was probably
barred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she ended up with 2 babies that she watched them grow and watched them learn how to fly, and she had pictures that were just amazing.
Yeah. Well, they're pretty tolerant of people. I mean, they have, especially if they have no experience of being harassed or anything like that by humans.
Yeah, the hawks that hang out in my yard, they just sit there and they look at you like, okay, you can't make me go anywhere because I'm up high and you're down low. They like to sit on the peak of my roof.
Yes.
And I have a small 10-pound miniature dachshund, which I worry about a little bit.
Yeah, you should.
Because I know that they can pick them up.
Yep.
And carry them away very easily. The only advantage of the miniature dachshund, when I checked with the vet, he said, they're so long and wiggly, it throws the balance off for the bird. And the biggest problem would have is the bird would pick it up and then drop it. Yeah. And it would get hurt more than actually being taken away by the birds, by the hawks.
Well, you bring up a good point, because people who let their cats out, let their small dogs out, if there's raptors or birds of prey in the area, like a red-tailed hawk, or especially horned owls. Horned owls love cats, and so it's best to have an indoor cat rather than let them fly or
so sometimes
walk free.
You think the cat must have gotten hit by a dog and by a car, and it's actually been a meal.
Well, if it's gone, if it's disappeared, it could well have been taken by a great horn. Yeah.
Now, what other ones can we expect to see in Essex County, mostly at this time of the year?
Well, once again, weather depending and food resources depending. We could expect to see out on Plum Island snowy owl, and I say expect because we've historically had them there before. They are birds of the open tundra the Arctic, so they're not specific to trees, or they need open marshland, grassland. We're also expecting rough-legged hawks, which are also birds of the open grassland, tundra areas.
Which is why they have a tendency to go towards the flats.
Yes,
Okay.
toward the flats and out on the Plum Island. What else? I mean, you expect, as I say, the accipiters are around, the so-called the Cooper's hawks and the sharp-shinned hawks. Although Coopers are more plentiful, it seems, than the sharp-shinned. There are a couple of, we have 3 species of falcons in the area. We have the smallest, which is the American kestrel, and then the intermediate
And how
size.
small would that be?
Well, it's about a 12, from beak to tail, this probably could be to 12 to 13 inches.
Okay.
And then
bigger than a sheet of paper.
yes, not much, but some. And then Merlin is another falcon that it's intermediate in size, and then the largest of the 3, which is the peregrine. The kestrel is not doing very well at all population-wise. Habitat is being a factor, but this time of year we're likely to see merlins and peregrines. There's been a great invasion early in November of so-called finch, seed-eating birds, the finches, like the white-winged crossbills and red crossbills, pine siskins, common redpolls, and that is because of the failure of the seed crop up north. They feed on the seeds in pine cones and in spruce cones and various cones, and so there are a lot of those birds in the area now, and merlins and Cooper's hawks like that, and so they are not hurting for food at all. Right, they're the carnivores, and so and they don't they take live birds, and so it's they're not hurting too badly. So.
The hawks that hang around the backyard, I have large arborvitaes, and they like to go in and hide in those for some reason. But what are the little birds that chase them? There's little black birds that are chasing them all the time.
Chasing the
hawks.
Well, it could be any blackbird, because hawks are a threat. They're seen as a threat, and birds like starlings, like red-winged blackbirds, like grackles.
These would probably be the starlings.
They would go after them, try to harass them as a flock, normally speaking, because they see these birds as a threat, and they're trying to harass them away.
Okay, because they nest in the arborvitae as well.
Yeah.
And I have some other bushes that have a lot of nests. In fact, when I go out to trim them back, I get yelled at a lot.
That's right. So,
The other birds are screaming at me. But it's amazing too. It looks like they're playing with each other. So they're actually trying to chase the hawk away.
You bet.
Okay.
Yeah. If the hawk is there.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're harassing.
Yeah. They're interesting and they're beautiful when you see them. And sometimes there are 6 or 8 or 10 across the street, and they're just flying around. And
you're talking about the hawks now?
The hawks.
Not the starlings.
No,
Yeah, okay.
there's everything like that. But there are a lot of hawks.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the small animals come to eat what's left out of the gardens that people didn't finish taking the crop. So the small critters come to eat what's there, and then the hawks come to eat the critters.
Now, are most of these hawks, are they red-tailed hawks?
Most of them.
Yeah.
Most of them.
Yeah, because they're kind of a acidified hawk, and they're pretty used to people, and you'll see them. They're a fairly common sight along the interstates. They set up in trees alongside to watch for rodent activity in the median between the roadways. Yeah.
And so it's not a myth that they have wonderful eyesight.
Oh, eyesight. Wish I had some of that. Yeah.
Now, the actual environmental center that's there in Newburyport, it has regular hours.
It does.
Okay.
Yeah. JoppaFlats Education Center is open daily from 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m., except on Mondays. It's closed unless it happens to be a holiday. Then they'll be open.
Okay.
But they're open, and there's just all kinds of wonderful programs for families, kids, adults. We have a lot of birding programs. We have Lisa Hutchins, who is our teacher naturalist, has done wonderful things in developing and providing programs for families and kids. And if people are interested, and I would encourage you to check out the website, which is maassaudubon.org, and then go after JoppaFlats Education Center, and the current programs and the catalog of programs is included therein.
And there's a lot going on.
There is a lot going on.
I was surprised because you just don't hear about it, and then all of a sudden you go online and
Well,
there's all kinds of things.
The center has 5.5 permanent employees, but about 200 volunteers. So it's we volunteers who make the operation go. We're fond of saying, but it is very busy, and it's done extremely well and continues to increase in its popularity and usefulness, really, for the whole area.
Is there, I mean, when I think of bird watching, I think of an elderly person with a set of binoculars sitting in the grasses. A lot of young people getting involved and kids.
They are, and it's really a treat. It really is. I lead some programs, some birding programs that have young kids as part of the clientele, if you will, and it's just so much fun to get people, especially young kids, interested in birds and in birding. It's one of my bigger rushes, if you will, is to put somebody, young or old, behind a spotting scope that's on an adult bald eagle, and it's the first eagle they've ever seen, and the expression of amazement when they look through that scope to see that bird is really amazing. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah.
When I was in Alaska, we did one of the tours. We did some rafting through the Eagle Preserve. Hundreds and hundreds of eagles.
Common as house sparrows, right?
Yeah, it was crazy. Now, there are a lot of eagles, not a lot. There are a few eagles on the Merrimack River.
Yes.
Because I've been on the river with some friends, and you can actually see the nests and everything.
Well,
the bald eagles.
You saying plural nests is maybe a little bit of an exaggeration, I think, but because there's only been a couple that have been nesting down in this part of the Merrimack.
Yeah,
but
I think we saw 2 nests.
But the important thing is that they are. They are nesting, and more are. For the whole state of Massachusetts now, the total eagle population is in excess of 100, which is amazing, having been 0 not many years ago.
Really?
And right now, we are not seeing very many eagles because, once again, of what's happening up north. There's no ice on the rivers and on the lakes, and it's open, essentially an open season. There's no snow, and so there's food available for these birds up north. And as soon as things start to freeze up a bit more, then the birds will be pushed down the river, so to speak, and so that they have available food resources in that open water.
But then most of them will go back north to nest in the spring.
Yes, yeah. Well, I shouldn't say most, because an eagle takes about 5 years to become sexually mature before it will nest, before it will breed, and so there are a number of younger birds that are in the mix and won't be going back up north immediately to nest.
They just hang out here wherever they were born.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So thank you very much. This has been wonderful. All this information.
Well,
and
you're welcome.
Now I'll know a lot more when I watch the hawks out in the backyard.
I hope so. If not, give me a call.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's been a
You're
pleasure.
welcome. Been a pleasure.
It's been a
Yeah,
pleasure.
Thank you.
I'm Beverly Enos. This is Spotlight Georgetown. Don't forget Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Thank you for joining us. Bye for now.